Our gospel lesson this morning comes to us from the 14th chapter of Luke's gospel, beginning at the first verse. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. Just then, in front of him, there was a man who had dropsy. And Jesus asked the lawyers and Pharisees, "Is it lawful to cure people on the Sabbath or not?" But they were silent. So Jesus took him and healed the man and sent him away. Then Jesus said to them, "If one of you has a child or an ox that has fallen into a well, will you not immediately pull it out on the Sabbath day?" And they could not reply to this. When Jesus noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor, in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, "Give this person your place." And then, in disgrace, you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, the host may say to you, "Friend, move up higher." Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Jesus also said to the one who had invited him, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your family or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Who among us doesn't love a good dinner party? Especially when you know that the hosts will provide delicious food, exquisite wine, and interesting conversation partners. Yet at the same time, who among us, when invited to such a party, doesn't wonder, where will I sit at that table? With whom must I make small talk during the shrimp cocktail and the beef Wellington? Will I have a good seat? Will I get to meet and talk with the guest of honor? And surely there are some among us who enjoy, even thrive on giving such a party. We obsess over the menu. We make multiple trips to Total Wine for the perfect vintages. We agonize over our invitation list, for we want just the right mix of personalities. But we also want to be sure those we invite will be suitably wowed by our attention to every last detail. Perhaps they'll even invite us back to their home. Enter now the most sought-after dinner guest of all, Jesus of Nazareth. Our gospel lesson for today is the third time in Luke's gospel that Jesus has accepted a dinner invitation from a Pharisee. Now, the Pharisees of Jesus' day were the legalists. They believed in following legal traditions ascribed not just to the Bible, but rather to the traditions of their ancestors, their fathers. To say Jesus got on their nerves is an understatement. Biblical scholars are quite clear. The Pharisees were always watching Jesus. Didn't it say that at the very beginning of our story today? They were always watching him, waiting for him to do something contradictory to the traditions of the fathers. something they, the Pharisees, perceived as inconsistent with the religious practices of their day. The meal in our story occurs on the Sabbath, and the party givers, the Pharisees, are watching Jesus closely. For at this point in Luke's gospel, Jesus has been really busy on the Sabbath. He's been healing and teaching, and the Pharisees are quite concerned about what he has been doing on the Sabbath, especially the acts of healing, for those are active ministry acts. And the Pharisees really want to trip him up. So wouldn't you know, of course, the first person Jesus encounters in our story at this dinner party is a man with dropsy, or what we know as heart failure. Now, Jesus, never the one to shrink from controversy, decides to test the people. Is it lawful to cure people on the Sabbath or not? He asks. Silence. After healing the man and posing another question about the Sabbath and what those same people would do if their own child fell into a well on the Sabbath, there is radio silence. And in that silence, Jesus looks around the table and notices the guests have all tried to choose the best places to sit, the places of honor. At that point, Jesus reaches deep into his knowledge of the Hebrew Scriptures and offers a parable, essentially a paraphrase of the passage from Proverbs Brian read just a moment ago. If you really want to be honored at a party like this, don't go for the best seat right away. Someone more honorable than you might show up, and imagine your embarrassment when you're forced to sit somewhere else. Instead, sit in the least desirable seat, and maybe, just maybe, your host will make a big deal of calling you up to a place of honor, and everyone will notice you. In those few simple words, Jesus, as one biblical scholar says, skewers the honor hierarchy. For overt jockeying for positions of honor at any gathering is tacky. It's cringeworthy. It's even dishonorable. And it's equally dishonorable to place oneself deliberately in the least desirable seat, all with the hope and intent of being called up to the place of honor. But Jesus isn't finished. For after skewering the guests, Jesus then turns to the host, recommending that future banquets should not be planned for those who can return the favor someday. Rather, hold banquets for those who can never issue a return invitation: the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. The message of today's gospel lesson is clear. It's not where you sit at the table. It is simply that you are at the table, period. You have been invited, you have been welcomed, you are accepted. Now prepare to be blessed. And when you yourself are ready to throw a party, think carefully about whom you'll invite. Don't give a single thought to which folks might someday issue a return invitation. Instead, invite those who need special attention. In our day and time, invite the lonely, the grieving, the confused, the searching. It's a clear message. But what does it mean for us? I believe it means, as Krista will sing in a few moments, for everyone born, there's a place at the table. And as one of my favorite vocal artists, Carrie Newcomer, sings, Let not our hearts be hardened to those living on the margin. There is room at the table for everyone. This is where it all begins. This is how we gather in. There is room at the table for everyone. Too long we have wandered, burdened, and undone. But there is room at the table for everyone. Let us sing the new world in. This is how it all begins. There is room at the table for everyone. No matter who you are, no matter where you're from, there is room at the table for everyone. Here and now we can be the beloved community. There is room at the table for everyone. There is room for all, and no gift is too small. There's enough if we share. Come on, pull up a chair. There is room at the table for everyone. If there's room at the table for everyone, if all seats are equal and good, who is it that receives the invitations? This, my friends, is the question for us as a Matthew 25 church, which our session has courageously committed us to be. A church that takes seriously feeding the hungry, housing the homeless, equality for those who face discrimination every single day because of the color of their skin or their sexual orientation. These are the ones Jesus commands us to invite to the table, the vulnerable, the overlooked, the forgotten, described so vividly in the parable of the Last Judgment in the 25th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. These are the neighbors near and far who may never have experienced the love of God shared around a table. These are the neighbors we are to invite and make room for at the table. On our day of caring, when we reach out to our shut-in members, when we offer time and service to Dayspring Center, when we write postcards of advocacy to Bread for the World, we are saying there is room at the table. When we share an amazing lunch on Sunday, October 2nd, in support of the Umoja Project in Kenya, we are proclaiming, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, there is room at the table for everyone. When we provide meals for a Family Promise family, assist in completing a Habitat for Humanity house, when we shop for the children of School 55 during Clothe a Child, we are saying loud and clear, come on, pull up a chair. There is room at the table for everyone. So if you haven't figured it out by now, here's the bottom line. There's room at the table for everyone. Everyone. And it doesn't matter where anyone is sitting. It's really just that simple. At the same time, it is also just that challenging. As those who follow Jesus, as a community committed to sharing the good news of God's love with neighbors near and far, are we ready? Are we ready to issue the invitations? Invitations to those who might look different from how we look? Are we ready? Are we ready to welcome those who might not be able to repay us? Are we ready? I pray that we are. For here and now we can be the beloved community. There is room at the table for everyone. May it be so. And to God be the glory. Amen.